Hello and welcome back to the Commonwealth, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Minutemen's primary weapon, which is the Laser Musket, which is a pretty interesting weapon in Fallout 4. This is probably going to be the very first energy weapon that you find, as you can find this in Concord, just outside of the main building, where Preston tells you to grab one of these. And this is a pretty strong weapon, honestly, per shot. However, it is very quirky and a little bit strange. So the Laser Musket for stats has 30 damage per shot, which is actually pretty good for the start. It's not bad at all. 18 damage per second. This one does have low damage per second. That can even be lower depending on how many cranks you have to use for this, because you do have to crank this every time that you'd like to shoot it. This one has 71 range, which is pretty decent. 70 accuracy, it is actually quite accurate. This one costs 30 action points to be using in VATS, so it's okay in VATS. This does have a magazine of 1 shot regardless, although that can vary from 1 to 6 in terms of power, depending on what your gun is. By default, the Laser Musket can just have 2, so it's either 1 or 2 cranks, and this weighs 12.6 weight, which is pretty heavy for a weapon like this, although again, Fallout 4's weapon weight is kind of crazy anyway. For the pros of the Laser Musket, this one does actually have pretty good damage per shot, which is nice. It is an early game weapon, so you can deck it out really quickly if you would like, especially if you're going with the science skill. That can help too. And it also has pretty long range. You can use this pretty effectively as a sniper rifle for an energy weapon build, or just a gun build in general. For the cons of this though, its DPS is very low because you do have to crank it every time, and that also makes it kind of awkward because you can't just hold down the reload button. That just puts your weapon away. You actually do have to tap your reload button multiple times in order to have so many cranks on the gun. This also makes it so it's pretty awkward to be using in a lot of situations. It's awkward to be using indoors. You can kind of help with that if you get like the beam splitter on it and use it kind of as a shotgun. It's still not as easy to use as a shotgun indoors, but it's at least something then. And it has a slow follow-up shot. So if you miss your first shot, or if your first shot doesn't kill an enemy, then the next shot is going to be slower and it's going to take a little bit longer. It's also not a particularly great weapon if enemies are rushing you, because if there's multiple enemies, even if they're weaker enemies, you still have to crank this up every time to shoot those enemies. For perks that you want to go with Rifleman for this. This is always counted as a rifle, even with the cut down stock. For an overall rating for the Laser Musket on my tier list, I'd probably put this thing into D tier. It's just slow and it's a bit awkward. It's going to get outclassed by quite a few other weapons later on too. Even if you're going with an energy weapon build, a sniper plasma weapon or a sniper laser rifle is going to be better than this, especially if you want to go with like the Gauss rifle, just because they're all less awkward than this weapon. However, this weapon actually isn't that bad though, so that's why I'm not going to put it into like F tier, because there are still some uses, especially in the early game, where this one can work pretty well, and then so long as you're only using it as a long-range sniper rifle and swapping off of it to another weapon, you can actually get some pretty good value out of this, and that way it's also not super awkward to be cranking up every single time either. Let's go over a modded version of this, and there is actually no unique version of the Laser Musket, weirdly enough. You can, of course, find legendary effects on these. For some reason, I actually usually get quite a few good Laser Muskets every time I do a playthrough of Fallout 4, where I almost always end up getting like a 2-shot one, or I end up getting an instigating one, or both. And that is actually really, really strong on the Laser Musket. Like, an instigating Laser Musket is actually probably like top tier just for like initiating a fight. It's not going to be as good, again, if there's multiple enemies, but if you just want to snipe off enemies at a distance, it's not bad at all. So for our attachments, we have our capacitor. This is either a regular capacitor all the way up to a 6-crank capacitor. You might as well go with the 6-crank if you can put it on there, because this is just the more cranks you have, the more damage you can put on the gun. Also, a unique thing about this weapon is that it wasn't intended to be using ammo, because this was just supposed to be a crank weapon, and that builds up your ammo so that you can actually shoot it. This wasn't supposed to be taking ammo in the first place. I'm not entirely sure why they patched that into the game. I know they did it before the game was officially released, but it seems kind of weird for them to do that, because that would have added so much more utility to the Laser Musket, and I don't think it would have gotten the hate that it kind of has now, where most people don't really end up using this weapon. Anyway, back to the attachments. Next up is a barrel, and you might as well go with the bracketed long barrel. This just gives you the most bonus out of these, unless you wanted to cut this down into like a single shot shotgun, in which case then probably the short barrel would be the best, but I don't really like that as much. Usually I'm just using this as a sniper rifle, so I would go with the bracketed long barrel. Then we either have the short stock or the full stock. You might as well go with the full stock. It just gives you better stability overall, so go with that one. For a sight, you can kind of go with any sight that you would like. I usually put a scope on this, either a medium scope or a short scope. Long scopes I don't really find to be all that necessary because you're not usually sniping at super long range in Fallout 4. The short scope works perfectly fine at pretty much every range, and same goes with the medium scope. Also, technically, scopes do give you the most amount of damage. If you get the one book that gives you more damage with scopes on a weapon, you get like 5% more, so that's kind of nice. And then we've got a muzzle attachment at the end, which I usually go with the beam focuser since I'm using this at very long range. This will just give me the most amount of damage per shot. Again, if you didn't like that and you wanted to make this into more of like a shotgun style weapon, you'd probably just go with like the short stock, the short barrel, and put the beam splitter on this, and then just try to shoot enemies at close range, although that is also going to be kind of awkward with the laser musket. I guess an alternative that you could have is have multiple laser muskets, and then just have them set so you can just swap off of them quickly, and then you can go back and crank them all up when you need to. That could be a decent option too. For the modded version of the laser musket, I would put this a tier higher. I'd put it up into C tier. It actually makes for a decent sniper rifle so long as you're okay with the kind of quirkiness of the weapon. And it's not bad to have as a backup weapon because this doesn't go through ammo very quickly at all. And that'll do it for the laser musket. Tell me your thoughts on the laser musket and how you like building it. Also, what legendary effects you found on your guns. Instigating is actually pretty decent with this one. I actually like that one a lot. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. Tell me what weapon you would like to see next. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.